$1 Million Wednesday, our favorite day of the week. This week, we're joined by a couple guests, but before we tell about who they are, Kim, what is the $1 Million Case Study?
So the $1 Million Case Study is a big charity project. So we have a goal to sell $1 million worth in revenue by launching products to sell on Amazon, and then we're going to donate all of the profits to charity. And each week we document every step of the journey for you guys, so you can learn from our successes and our mistakes, and hopefully launch your own business too.
And everyone is telling us this is the undisputed best resource online for learning how to sell on Amazon. So you're going to want to make sure before you forget to go ahead and hit the like button below or subscribe. Sam and Travis, how's it going today, guys?
Hey, we're doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're fantastic. Thanks again for joining us. Sam, you want to tell the audience real quickly a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm Sam Scudolari, calling in from Atlanta, Georgia. I've been with Flexport for about 2 years now. I started off in operations, learned a lot from Travis actually in the operational aspect of what we do with Amazon, and now I help run our sales team here based in Atlanta, Georgia.
Fantastic. Travis, where are you tuning in from?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Travis. I am tuning in from our Flexport Los Angeles office, and I've been with Flexport for almost 2 years now. And I help run the operations team and guide them on FBA shipping logistics.
Fantastic. Throughout this case, though, we get tons and tons of questions about how to ship, about freight forwarding, kind of like what methods they should use, whether it's air or sea. This is probably one of the topics that we get the most questions about. So we're really happy to have you guys on, kind of shed some light, dispel some of the myths out there about this stuff. So this is definitely going to be a very educational episode, and I'm really stoked for it. With that being said, you guys want to go ahead and share your screen? I know you prepared some slides for it, and we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, you should be able to see my screen now.
Yep, we got it. Looks good.
Awesome. So yeah, quick introduction. There's again Travis and Sam here, both working at Flexport. I'm doing the operations with Flexport. Sam running our sales team and helps with our onboarding. So any new clients that want to start shipping, he'll be your main point of contact.
So a quick agenda that we'll run through today. I'm going to walk you through creating an Amazon shipment plan. Super important that that gets done at the very beginning of this process. Selecting final delivery method. Travis is a whiz at this, so he'll walk you through, making sure you understand everything that goes along with it. Labeling, palletization, inspections, all these great terms and things that you need to know to succeed with shipping. We'll walk through all of that, and then at the end, we'll kind of walk you through a little bit of the market updates that come with peak season and this time of year, getting ready for the holiday season. So I think the best way to start is to understand the difference of moving your freight with a freight forwarder versus maybe a supplier or what we refer to as a courier service. And the basic principles of it are, if you're shipping via air and your cargo weighs more than 250 kilos, then you're probably going to need a freight forwarder. Freight is obviously mass quantities as opposed to the smaller quantities that you move maybe with DHL or UPS. And once you kind of get above that 250 kilo mark, that's when your freight forwarder really gets competitive with rates, and they're a little more adept at moving your goods. And then for ocean shipments, you're always probably going to want to use a freight forwarder. Better rates, better transit times, better communication with your forwarder, and it just makes the whole process a little bit more streamlined.
Sam, just real quick, we actually do get a question often like, could we do this ourselves or would we have to use a freight forwarder? Do you want to just discuss that real quick?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and we'll get into it a little bit about in the next slide about why, not using a supplier. A lot of individuals want to use their supplier because they've built this great relationship with them. But the problem is, and Travis, actually, if you want to slide over to the next screenshot, thank you. The reason why we generally don't recommend that you use your supplier and kind of do it on your own is a couple of things. Really, what it comes down to is transparency and communication, really. The service is less. You don't get that up-to-date updates from your freight forwarder as you do with your supplier. And additionally, you have to outsource your customs brokerage when your goods come into the country. Pricing's not as great. The entire process is just a little more broken. There's a lot of more hidden things that go on within the transit of your goods. So generally speaking, your freight forwarder should be able to provide you that transparency, the better pricing, and ultimately just a better experience throughout the entire shipping process. So a big thing that we spend a lot of time trying to emphasize is the difference between moving your goods in a full container versus a less than a container load. And I think in general, there's this prevailing thought within the industry that if you're not moving full containers, you're not going to get the same service as you will, when you do move a full container. And I think that it's important to note that there are a lot of great services that can provide less than container loads. Not everybody's moving full container loads. Generally speaking, when you get above the threshold, call it about 22 CBM, then you become a great candidate for full container loads. It becomes more efficient. It's more price. The price sensitivity is less, and the advantages are a lot greater with full container loads. Anything less than that, though, there are great less than container load options. Flexport does offer some of that, but ultimately, what happens with less than container loads is you keep your inventory low. You kind of have a better understanding and control of your supply chain as far as understanding what's going into your Amazon Seller Central account and into FBA locations. FCL can be a little bit cheaper than LCL once we're talking about that cost sensitivity. Once you hit about that 22 CBM range, FCLs do also get delivered a little more quickly with LCL than LCLs. LCL, if you can imagine, if you can't fill up an entire container, what would happen is a lot of other companies are going to get put into one container. It's going to be controlled by your freight forwarder. In that process, we have to take the goods I believe this is going into the UK, comes into the UK, it's got to get taken to a warehouse and then deconsolidated, prepped for Amazon, and then individual truckers will come grab your goods and take it to the various FBA locations. Now, in the United States, you can take a full container load to Amazon, but it's important to note that in the UK, this is not an option. With a full container load, it still needs to be deconsolidated. So it's a full container still somewhat works like an LCL in the UK because it still needs to be deconsolidated and full containers can't be delivered into the UK. Travis, do you have anything to add on top of that?
No, Sam, you did a good job covering it.
Perfect. All right. A couple things to note as far as just like moving your containers. There's several different options. The smallest being a 20-foot container. Its maximum capacity is up to 28 CBM. Again, around 22 CBM is when you start trying to analyze whether it's more advantageous to move via an LCL or move as a full container on your own. And then it works up from there into the 40-foot containers, and then you get to the 40 high cubes, 45 high cubes. This is a great slide to kind of review as far as understanding the maximum capacity, what the weight thresholds are. In my time in working with Flexport and the thousands of clients that we help in Amazon, I haven't seen a lot of weight capacity issues, but that's something that can absolutely be addressed by your freight forwarder, whoever is moving your goods for you.
Hey, can we just touch on something real quick there, guys? So I think there is something that needs to be kind of thought about for let's say you have like 20 CBMs and you're trying to decide whether you do like an LCL shipment or a full 20-foot container. Before, I know I've had this experience where I decided to go ahead with a full 20-foot container because it could be delivered straight to Amazon. And there's less worry about your goods getting damaged and stuff, I feel like. But then when a 20-foot container, I guess, showed up, or when my factory realized that I was doing a full container load instead of an LCL shipment, they wanted to charge me more money. Have you had that experience before? Can you speak to that real quick?
Travis, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I could jump in. So a lot of it has to do with the origin fees. So having to have a container bring to your shipper's warehouse and having them to load that and then process the VGM, which is the verified gross mass. The export customs clearance is different. The automated manifesting system that does all the electronic documents is different for a full container. And the port also charges like a gate fee, equipment fee, everything that they can charge you for, they will. So that's why the shipper will often charge you higher prices when you switch from LCL to FCL.
Okay, and I guess normally when I'm shipped or when I place an order, it's not really discussed ahead of time. I think they probably just generally assume maybe if it's less than like 20 CBM that it's going to be like an LCL shipment. But yeah, for all the listeners, that's something to keep in mind.
And that should, I think, that's a great point, Greg, in the sense that I think that should be something that is communicated to you. A lot of it, of the services that freight forwarders provide, should be a conversation on what you are most comfortable with as far as pricing, as far as transit. Once you kind of get into that weird zone of LCL versus FCL, that should absolutely be a conversation amongst your freight forwarder with the client that you're working with, so that they understand not only what the pricing is, but what that actual transit process looks like, as well as the timing of your transit. Shipping via air. So it's important to note that chargeable weight is the weight in which airlines will use to determine the cost of this shipment. Now, carriers are going to pretty much charge you for whichever is greater, the gross weight or the volumetric weight. So be aware and really review the bills of lading, which we'll go over here shortly, and your commercial invoice and packing list to understand what that volumetric weight, what that total weight looks like, so that you don't kind of get charged these little fees behind your backs that that aren't necessarily as transparent sometimes with a lot of the freight forwarding that goes on. Inspections. So this is something that actually we get a lot of questions on in our day-to-day work. I think that obviously nothing can replace being able to go shake hands and look in the eye of the suppliers that you're working with. Nothing can replace that. A lot of times they'll be able to provide better minimum order quantity values for you if you do go meet them in person. Obviously, it's not something that is, something that we can all use. So the next best thing is inspections. And with inspections, it's a third-party source. They charge by man-day. There's several great options. VTrust, Topwin are some great solutions that we've used in past. And they charge by man-day. They send an individual agent to your supplier. They review your goods. They make sure everything's good to go. They give you the thumbs up. And then after that, then you would probably want to book your shipment with whichever freight forwarder you're moving with. After that inspection is good, then you probably want to book your shipment and they'll get everything moving out for you. Quick trip to try to negotiate ahead of time with your supplier to make sure that they pay for the second inspection if the first inspection fails. Again, it's a very much a negotiation game in which you our viewers, and we hope our clients are in control of.
Yeah, it's a good tip. Hey guys, can we touch on something real quick? I don't think there's a slide about this, but I know with our audience there's a lot of confusion, the difference between kind of like an air courier versus like whether you want to call it air freight or air cargo, what have you, like an air courier being like DHL or UPS, like the air cargo, air freight having to use like a freight forwarder. Could one of you guys just maybe like just chat about that for a second?
Sure, I could take that. So yeah, there's two different ways to move goods around the world. There's the freight lanes and there's the express lanes. And they both have different rules, different processes, and different types of customs clearance. So it's not the same. So if you are shipping small items like Sam mentioned in the beginning, you'll want to use express courier because they'll do door-to-door service, just like if you send a UPS ground package from your address at home. It works the exact same way, just international fees would apply. It is very expensive as you get over the 150 to 200 kilogram range, and that's when it doesn't make sense, not cost effective to use express. And that's when you should move things in freight. So it's moving in bulk on freighters, and you're sharing the aircraft with many other freight forwarders, and that's how most cargo is moved around the world. Obviously, freight is slower, but you can use express there's no limit on it. It's just how much you're willing to pay.
Cool, thanks.
All right, so before I get into the weeds of shipping to FBA, just want to share that before I was working at Flexport, I was actually an operations manager for a very large Amazon seller. So I manage all their FBA logistics. We fulfilled from our own warehouse, and we also fulfilled from US FBA. And when I joined, I helped them expand into FBA EU and FBA Japan. So I've been in your shoes. I know exactly what it's like to deal with seller support and try to get a straight answer out of Amazon about VAT and just how do you get your goods to an FBA warehouse in UK, and then how does it work from distribution from there. So now working on the other side, being on the freight side, I could say I've confidently found the best and most effective way to deliver your goods through FBA using a freight forwarder. So the first thing to note is when you start off your FBA shipment plan, your ship from address, this is where you make or break your whole shipment. It needs to be a ship from address within the US. And I know it's logical, like, oh, it's shipping from my factory in China, that's what I should put. However, Amazon never wanted you to put a foreign address in this field because it locks out many of the features they offer to the sellers. And Amazon's not going to allow their services to go to China and pick up your goods and deliver them. They're going to want to see a US address. So it's very important that whenever you're shipping to US FBA, you put a US address. If you're shipping to UK FBA, it has to be a UK address and that ship from. And then that will make your whole plan much more smoother and unlocks a lot of the seller benefits that only you guys can take advantage of. So yeah, and then in addition to selecting the correct ship from address, put all your SKUs in one shipment plan. So I've seen a lot of sellers make the mistake is they think they need to put one MSQ and one FBA ID, another MSQ and another FBA ID. It's not needed to do that, and you're just creating more work for yourselves and adding more costs. Because if you, like for example, you want to use Amazon LTL services in the US, you have to dispatch an Amazon LTL trucker for each FBA ID. So if you have 3 SKUs and you make 3 FBA plans, you're paying for 3 truckers instead of just lumping them into one FBA ID and paying for 1 trucker. So every time you create an FBA plan, make sure the ship from address is in the country that you're importing to, and all your SKUs are in the one FBA ID. There is no limit to how many SKUs you can have them, just throw them all in.
Okay, and then we would just ask our freight forwarder or flex forwarder, whoever else, for the address that we use for the ship to, correct? And that's going to be the warehouse that you import
Right.
to? Okay.
Exactly. Whatever freight forwarding warehouse they use, yeah, you want to get that address from them.
Cool, thanks.
So final delivery method. So there's 3 ways to insert your goods into Amazon US. You can have a freight forwarder's local trucker make the delivery, or once you've used a US address as your ship from, you unlock 2 benefits. So you can take advantage of Amazon's UPS discount. So you can generate Amazon UPS labels straight from your seller account. And this is recommended for shipments of 50 cartons or less. However, it's up to you how many you want to send. Amazon caps you out at 200 cartons per FBA ID. It is the fastest way to have your goods. You don't have to worry about making an appointment. It doesn't have to be palletized. It's simply the goods are picked up by your local UPS driver and it gets inserted just like any other UPS ground package would. You can see your tracking in Seller Central, and it's definitely, if you're in a time crunch, it's the best method to use. However, if you don't want to pay the expensive costs, you can palletize your goods and take advantage of Amazon's LTL network. They have LTL agreements with all major carriers across the US, and this is definitely the most cost-effective way to deliver your goods into Amazon FBA. You have some warehouse in LA prep your goods. As soon as the pallets are built per Amazon spec, you dispatch the Amazon LTL carrier through your seller account. They show up to the ship from address you input at the beginning. They pick up the pallets, and then you're done. And then you just kind of wait for them to make the appointment, deliver the goods. It is the slowest. It could take up to 2 to 3 weeks once they pick up your shipment to actually make it into FBA. So you definitely get what you're paid for. It is very cheap, but it is very slow. So if you don't want to pay for UPS, but you don't want to wait 3 weeks for Amazon LTL, then it's best to have your freight forwarder. They can deliver just your shipment on a truck, usually within 7 days from the shipment being ready. They have to request the appointment with Amazon, and yeah, usually you get it within 7 days. And that's going to be like your middle cost, middle transit time. And it's important to note, if you're shipping to Amazon UK, there is no Amazon LTL services yet. There is Amazon UPS. You can download UPS UK labels. Same thing. It's up to you how many you feel comfortable with and comfortable with paying. They also cap it at 200. Or you just have the local trucker in the UK deliver the shipment as normal. And then FCL delivery. So this is the most cost-effective way to deliver goods because you skip the whole warehouse prep function. You can deliver a full container floor loaded as long as all the cartons have been labeled at origin straight into an FBA center if in your shipment plan you're given one FBA warehouse as your destination. If Amazon gives you a split, which oftentimes they do, then you have no choice but to unload the container, palletize per your splits, and then deliver that way. You do have the option of using the inventory placement program, which makes you get one FBA center all the time. But of course, Amazon will charge you to redirect the goods that normally would have been split at a per unit cost, usually about 25 to 30 cents per unit. So you just have to work out the math, what makes most sense for you. Pro tip from what I've seen, it's usually not in your best interest. It's just another way for Amazon to make money off of you. So I would avoid inventory placement program unless circumstances on your end dictate that you want it anyways.
Quick question for you. When you're shipping
Yeah.
a full container load straight to Amazon's DCs, are there any specific packing requirements that you need to adhere to I guess, that your factory does when they load the container?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Help Center in Seller Central, they do a good job of explaining this. It's pretty vague, but the basic guidelines they give you is just the cartons must be neatly stacked, must have the FBA labels at origin, and they recommend that the cartons are not stacked taller than 72 inches. So as long as they meet those requirements, they should be accepted. But please note, it's always up to the FBA dock manager at the time to whether accept or reject the shipment. And we have seen on multiple occasions where the goods were packed perfectly, but the dock manager refused it and rejected the shipment. And they don't have to give a reason why. Sometimes they say the chassis is too high, which is a silly excuse because all chassis around the world are made to the exact specification. Like if we had varying chassis size, international freight would be impossible. So they like to use that suggestion. I have heard a warehouse dude admit to me once they rejected the container because they just had too many callouts and they couldn't deal with it. Unloading a floor loaded container is obviously much more labor intensive. And I know Amazon warehouses hate it. Like when they see it, they will try everything they can to refuse it because it is a lot of work. But in their policy, they are required to accept it. So it is the risk that you run with delivering FCL, but I would say we have a success rate like 95%. So most of it times does get in, but there always is that risk that they'll reject it for any number of reasons.
If you read the Amazon guidelines, doesn't it say that you need to like leave the gaps for what are those called, like squeeze trucks or something to unload the boxes? Or is that not right?
Yeah, it'll also recommend like leave 6 inches on the container wall, 6 inches from the top. I have also seen Amazon full containers packed wall to wall to the brim, and like they should be rejected, but the Amazon DC took it anyways.
Okay,
So everything you see on there is purely a guidelines that it's your best chance of being accepted. But obviously, again, it's up to the dock manager whether they take it or not, and kind
gotcha.
of roll the dice.
Cool.
Yeah. And then we've seen that delivering FCL into EU centers direct is near impossible. You will make the appointment on the UK CARP system and they'll accept it. And then an hour later, just reject it and saying, we can't take it, we can't take it. So again, on the UK seller support, it does say they will take it, but we haven't seen one that actually would take it so far. So calculating your final delivery cost. So you can get an estimate within Seller Central. So with small parcel, if you want to see how much UPS costs, you just make that selection SPD. Then you select Amazon partnered UPS carrier. It's going to ask you to put in your box DIMs and your SKU count. It's called your web form. So just confirm those details. And then you just click on calculate at the bottom and it'll give you your cost. And then you can decide if that's what you want to do. Or if you want to do a calculation on LTL, you can do the same thing. So the screen will show if you do LTL, you would select LTL and then Amazon partner carrier. The only difference here is it doesn't ask for box DIMs. It's going to ask you for your pallet DIMs. So at this time, you're probably not going to have that pallet information, but it's fine because you just want to get estimates. So you can safely assume that your pallets will always be palletized to 48 by 40. And it asks you to input a height. The height actually doesn't change the price at all. They're just wanting to make sure you're not breaking their limit, which is 72-inch max pallet height, or 100 inches if you're doing double stack pallets. So just for the sake of the estimate, just throw in 72 inches, put the total weight of your goods, and to kind of calculate how many pallets you think your goods will be, a rough estimate is 1.5 CBM is about one pallet, 2 CBM to be safe. So just calculate your total CBM, divide it by 1.5, and then you get your estimated pallet count. And then you throw those numbers in here, put your freight ready date as today, put a contact information. The freight class, so the freight class, you'll see numbers from 50 to 500, and those are LTL classification charges. Basically what it means is how bulky your goods are. So if you're shipping flat pieces of paper, your freight class would be 50. And if you're shipping a large sectional couch, your freight class would be 500. So a 100 is right in the middle. It's what most people's goods fall under. So just for the sake of the estimate, select 100. Declared value is just the value on your commercial invoice. So once you have all those details in, you can hit calculate and you'll see what your LTL trucking charges are to move that amount of cargo. And then from there, you can make the best decision on what service you want to use.
How does a customer know their freight class? I've always seen that there. And I've just always left it to default. And it's never been an issue. But
Yeah.
how is there a better way to figure that out?
There are websites online. If you just like estimate your freight class, there's guides that say like they'll have you type in your product and it kind of will give you an estimated freight class based off that.
Okay, cool.
And that will actually does change your price. So what we did in the early days is we always selected 50 to save customers the most money. And for about a year, it was fine. But then I think Amazon started cracking down because one seller let him know that, hey, I got a warning from Amazon that they actually inspected my LTL delivery and found out the freight class was actually this and charged me the difference. Luckily, that seller, I mean, we're very upfront with that seller, let him know like, hey, we always selected 50 to save you money. And we thought it wouldn't make a difference. And he was very grateful that we probably saved him hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in the meantime. But that's why now we do 100 as the average. So preparing your goods. So for FCL and air, ship your cartons as loose and labeled. We always get the question whether you should ship your goods palletized or should I palletize it? Like who's gonna do the palletization? It's always best to let the destination palletize because you don't want to ship your freight in pallets. It makes your goods heavier and creates more volume. And for LCL, your freight rate is purely dependent on volume. So the bigger shipment, the more it's going to cost. And then air freight is on a per kilogram basis. So pallets obviously add weight and makes your freight much more expensive. We only recommend that you palletize at origin if your goods are very, very fragile and you're worried they might be damaged in transit. A large portion of our clients, they always ship loose cartons. And then our warehouse in LA, they'll palletize for Amazon spec and then forward it into Amazon. And then again, for FCL, the general guidelines, cartons must be neatly stacked, labeled at origin, and not stacked taller than 72 inches. So labeling, it's very crucial that your supplier labels your units and your master cartons at origin. It is common practice. Some might give you pushback and say like, oh, I don't understand this, or I don't think I should do this. It's okay to be firm with your supplier, just stand your ground. All of our clients, they have their supplier label at origin, so we know it can be done. You just have to maybe walk them through the first steps if they're unfamiliar, but it is common practice in China to have your supplier label. They'll put on the FN SKU. At a bare minimum, they should be putting on your FN SKU, the unit label on each of your items. And then on the master carton level, they should be putting that FBA label on each master carton. And doing this also mitigates any chance of human error on the destination side. Because while our warehouse can label your products with FBA labels, then you're trusting another set of hands to handle your SKUs, which they're not familiar with. And if you have multiple SKUs going to multiple FBA IDs, the shipment plans can get pretty complex. And you want to make sure that the correct FBA label is on the correct box because they are SKU specific. You can ask Amazon to make generic FBA labels, so it doesn't matter, but they charge you a processing fee based on the amount of SKUs you have. So it's up to you to make that cost, but I mean, there's no reason not to have your supplier just label everything at origin, saves you the processing fee, and mitigates any chance of human error on the destination side.
And then as a quick side note, I've never had a supplier charge me for applying those labels before. Whereas if you have your freight forwarder do it,
right,
I think you guys charge 50 cents or whatever. And it could add up if if you have hundreds of labels. So
exactly.
Yeah, and just another side note, you can create a shipment plan as far as I know, like as early as you want. I've created them like months ahead of time. So some people are wonder like where to get the labels from. You can go ahead and like create one today, even if you're just putting down your deposit today or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, they never expire. You can leave them in working status for as long as you need. And last thing, if you're deciding to do a UPS shipment, so UPS parcel pickup from our warehouse in the US or UK into final DFBA warehouse, you can send those shipping labels to your supplier as well. It doesn't confuse the freight system. So again, freight moves completely differently than express. Labels are not being scanned in a freight system. So having a UPS ground shipping label will not confuse anybody and is very common practice to do. So if you're doing UPS, please still stick those shipping labels on at origin. So tracking your shipment. UPS is very easy. So the tracking data is pulled into your seller account. And you just click on the track on your shipment button in your FBA plan, and it's all there. With LTL, you have to wait for the LTL carrier to actually pick up your goods. And once that happens, they will sign the LTL BOL, as you can see here, and they put their carrier pro number on it. So like in this shipment, Estes was the nominated carrier for this LTL pickup. Then they sign the BOL, put their Estes pro number, and the pro number is always the number below the barcode. So then you just go to the Estes website, click on track your shipment, put in your pro number, and then you can see the progress of Amazon's LTL carrier into FBA. Usually when freight forwarders arrange it this way, your service type will be to port and not to door, because we're doing everything we can to get your shipment ready at the port, made ready for Amazon. And then once Amazon picks it up, then it's no longer in our control. It's now in Amazon's hands. They run the LTL carrier service. If they're delayed, late, I mean, we can follow up on your behalf, but I mean, they're being paid by Amazon. So unless Amazon calls them, it's really hard to get anything out of them. So all we could do is kind of track the shipment for you at this point, and yeah, just provide the pro number for you and the website if needed. So things to consider for transit times. You should always allow like manufacturing, so from your supplier's door to the port or the consolidation warehouse to the port. For air, 1 to 2 days. LCL, 7 to 9 days. LCL has the longest lead time just because you'll have to share an LCL full container with many different shippers. They need time to do customs inspection for all those goods, pack the container, complete the documents, the verified gross mass, and then get the container to the port in time so it's loaded on the vessel to make your on-time vessel departure. So that's why it might seem like things are taking forever at origin, but it's the LCL consolidation time that is eating that transit. And then FCL, just 2 to 3 days before departure is usually good enough. And then when we get quotes, it depends. Different freight forwarders quote different ways. You just have to see what it says on the quote. Oftentimes they'll just quote the port to port. So that's just like for air, 1 to 2 days for express. If you have deferred service, it'd be about 3 to 5. And then ocean from China West Coast to US West Coast. Sorry, China East Coast to US West Coast. It's 14 to 16 days transit, just port to port on the ocean. Some freight forwarders will not put the complete door-to-door transit because it's just such a variability. A supplier will say the cargo ready date is this day, and then we'll change it due to X, Y, and Z reasons, and then the whole transit schedule just falls apart after that. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen at origin. That's why we just give you this is the general guidelines. But like in quotes, it's usually we can confirm the carrier's port-to-port transit, and that's usually what is shared. Things to consider for the destination side. So for ocean LCL, it takes also another 5 to 6 business days for the container to be offloaded from the vessel, brought to the CFS station, and then the CFS has to unload that container, separate everyone's goods, palletizes them, and then we'll say it's okay, now it's ready for pickup. And that gives us the cue to dispatch a trucker, pick it up, and then bring it back to the warehouse, and then forward it on to Amazon based on your preferred delivery method. And it's an important thing to note that deconsolidation facilities around the world, they don't take any instructions from anybody. They will palletize your goods completely at will. They definitely will not be per Amazon spec. So it does require another couple of business days for the trucker to, once they bring the goods back to their dock, they need to rebuild the pallets for Amazon spec, make sure the pallets are correctly labeled, and then either hand them to the LTL carrier or deliver themselves, or break down the pallets and make sure they get handed to the UPS driver. So prep and palletization, so you can see down there. So FlexPort has like a direct LCL service. So our LCL boxes actually skip the whole CFS process. They go directly to our own consolidation warehouse in Los Angeles. And that way our team builds per Amazon spec immediately. I mean, whether your goods are going Amazon or not, it just doesn't hurt. So everything is built per Amazon spec right away. And that cuts about 2 days off your lead time. And then with air, you can also expect another 1 to 2 days. So once a shipment lands at LAX, for example, the air terminal usually needs a few hours to break down that ULD, again, separate the cargo from the flight, make it ready for pickup. And then we can usually go in the next business day, recover the goods, and then at that time, rebuild the pallets as necessary or break it down for UPS pickup. Incoterms. So these are some things that you need to have negotiated with your supplier. So the main Incoterms that we work with are FOB, XWorks, and FCA. So FOB, free on board. Basically, your supplier is responsible for bringing the goods to the nearest port or freight forwarder's warehouse. And then you will be responsible for all other charges. Under XWorks, the freight forwarder will pick up the cargo from the supplier's door and handle the end-to-end transit of the shipment. Just important to note the FOB, it will make your unit prices higher because your supplier is covering those charges. XWorks, your unit prices will be lower. Usually it's in your best favor if you can agree to FOB terms with your supplier. You want to do that because the local charges they pay are generally less than what you would pay, a freight forwarder. So always try to get on FOB terms with your supplier if possible. And then I mentioned FCA. So FCA is the in-between FOB and Ex-Works. So FCA is a full Ex-Works. You're responsible for all the export customs clearance and document and handling fees, just not the trucking. So the supplier will bring the goods to the port and that's it. And then you take care of the rest. So it just depends on what deal you want to work with your supplier and your freight forwarder. Cargo insurance. Sam, you want to take over here?
Yeah, sure. I can hop in on here. I think just to kind of piggyback on a couple of things that you just said too, very important to keep in mind on the back part of the transit process, and something that Travis and I see a lot is the preparation. You notice there's 4 to 6 days, 5 to 6 days. There's these estimated days, and it's important to get with a freight forwarder that's going to, and whoever's moving your cargo really, to get with a freight forwarder who's going to prep you well for this and communicate with you throughout the entire process. Especially if you're moving LCL or air, there's a lot of hands that it's passing through, as you can tell. So being able to have someone who can walk you through that process, who can give you continual updates is extremely important, and planning becomes very important as well. And that kind of leads into the cargo insurance. As part of the preparation process, 50% of freight claims are denied by carriers. So it's important that you have a freight forwarder that can provide you insurance. It's usually a percentage basis of the commercial invoice value that you're moving your goods. The cargo passes through, like we said, so many hands that you never know what can happen. Although knock wood, you would never anticipate something to go wrong. Things do happen out on the rough ocean waters. So it's important to kind of alleviate your concerns by having cargo insurance prior to shipping, and pretty much every freight forwarder will be able to provide this insurance. Next slide. Shipping documents. This is the key to it all as far as moving your goods are concerned. The bill of lading is your ticket. It's similar to your ticket to get on an airplane when you want to go to wherever in the world. The ticket, it kind of outlines, the bill of lading outlines your journey of your cargo from origin to destination. It'll let you know who is, the liability, who the consignee is, and it really just kind of outlines the entire process. Telex release is an electronic release of the bill of lading. It's a release that pretty much says that your supplier's been paid. Telex release is actually the best way to do it. It's an automatic charge, and it smooth sailing through customs if you can get a telex release. And then the express bill of lading is the agreement between a buyer and a seller, and that is agreed upon prior to shipping, obviously. Next slide.
I'll add a few notes on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with the bill of lading, your supplier will always ask you one question, like, do you want an original or a telex? So if you just ask them, or if you don't say anything, they usually default to an original, meaning the only way to release your goods and give your freight forwarder authorization that goods have been paid for and they're cleared to deliver is they have to mail the actual hard copy to you, and then you have to forward that hard copy to your freight forwarder. And your freight forwarder by law is not allowed to deliver your goods until that document has been received. So there's no reason to ever select original bill of lading. Just don't do it. It's like an old archaic way of releasing goods. Always ask for a telex release. That way we can just get the release via email and goods can be released overnight. So the express bill of lading is something that only suppliers usually agree to once you have a good rapport and an established business relationship. But it is by far the best means. Basically, they are trusting you that you will always pay them on time or under the agreements that you guys have set. And that means there is no original needed and there's no telex needed. Like all bill of ladings are immediately released upon picking up the goods. So always try to establish an express release system with your supplier if possible. It will mitigate any chance of delays.
Travis, are you going to run with the commercial invoice packing list?
I can, unless you want to talk about it.
Go for it, man. You're killing it.
All right, so shipping documents. So your supplier will need to produce a commercial invoice and a packing list. Your CI is just the invoice. It's just like the finalized version of the pro forma invoice that your supplier would have sent you. Important to note for US Customs, they're very picky about the CI. So make sure that these things have been followed. And this will make sure your customs broker can clear shipment without any problems. So it needs to have the country of origin. So like made in China, for example, needs to have the manufacturer's address, full name and address of the importer of record. So if you're importing to the US and you're a non-resident importer, like you don't actually live in the US, you will still be the importer of record, and Amazon will be the ultimate consignee. So we can import using Amazon's EIN, but we denote that you're the importer of record by saying care of. So it'd be your business name, care of Amazon. Again, yeah, full name and address, supplier of manufacturer, complete description of merchandise in English. You can have the foreign language on there, but the translation into English must be present. Quantity of units for each product, unit value for each product, including currency declaration. It doesn't have to be a USD. It can be in Chinese RMB or pounds, sterling. As long as it's denoted, it's fine. And important to note, you can't have any free items on your commercial invoice. So if you have like samples or something that's a 0 line item, either don't include it or give it a value of 0.01. But customs will not accept a CI with a free item on it. Total extended value, so everything added up in the currency. And packing list. So packing list, information much match will obviously should match what's listed on the commercial invoice, or else customs will flag it and then you run it to issue. So just make sure your documents match, meet these requirements, and you should have no problem with customs entry. Getting through customs. So yeah, so just leads into this. So give your freight forwarder the commercial invoice and packing list and the product information. So usually when you onboard the freight forwarder, part of the onboarding process is they'll want to know what goods you're importing. And by customs law, it is the importer's responsibility to properly classify all your goods with the HS code. So your HS code is your 10-digit tariff code that basically says how much duty customs will assess on your product. And it's always given a percentage. So anywhere from free duty to as high as 26% if it falls under anti-dumping duty. But your broker, freight forwarder should help you with HS classification. We can offer suggestions, but it has to be the importer to confirm like, yes, this matches my product because you know your product better than anyone else.
I think if I can piggyback on that real quick too, Travis, is with customs, the biggest issues that we see are, again, not being prepared at the beginning. I think a lot of our clients spend a lot of time focusing on just getting their goods off and running, so to speak. And then they wait for customs till the last minute, and then they hit a bunch of snags and there's a bunch of problems. If you can get your product classifications done prior to booking your shipment, get your documents lined up, it provides a smoother process throughout not only customs, but the entire shipping process, really. And at the back end of it, you won't experience those issues. And as far as shipping directly into the UK for the purposes of this case, you're going to need your VAT number, and you're also going to need an EORI number, your economic operator registration and identification number. And it's just important to have that all set up prior to the entire shipping process, because you don't want to last minute be pulling things together and then have to pay for storage fees, demurrage fees, whatever they may be, because you didn't have your ducks in a row, so to speak.
Right, exactly. And we have seen clients that are willing to roll the dice. They just want to get the goods out of China as fast as possible. So they have us pick up the goods, and then they start the ERI application with HMRC in the UK. And they just hope that it finishes. Usually, I mean, that process is actually pretty quick, and 9 times out of 10, they have their ERI number before the goods arrive in the UK. But if for some reason there is some backlog at HMRC, you would be responsible for any like port storage charges until that number could be received, because we can't clear in the UK without that number. You have to have the ERI as a minimum. And if you want to reclaim some of your VAT, then you have to apply for a VAT number. Amazon UK doesn't require a VAT number, but Amazon Germany DE does require a VAT number. So important to note, if you want to ship into Germany, you must have a German VAT. And then types of customs exams. So there's 3 types in the US. So there's an X-ray exam, which is the least intensive. Basically, the container is just driven through an X-ray machine. And if they find something they want to take a look at, then it might get upgraded to a tailgate exam. Well, they'll just open the container and make sure it seems like that's what's on your CI. And if they still think something's fishy, then they'll do an intensive exam where they'll unload the entire container, inspect all the cartons, and make sure what is on your CI is truly in the boxes. And they obviously go up in price. So an X-ray exam could be around $100. Tailgates I've seen would be about $500, and intensive exams can be upwards of $1,500 to $1,700 for a full container. So it can be very expensive. They are completely at random. And again, it's all the importer's responsibility for any charges due to the government entity, unfortunately. Peak season, Sam, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Peak season obviously is a reference towards the holiday season's coming up. Companies are spending time stocking up their shelves, getting ready to rock and roll for all the great holidays that ensue. So, but what that means for our clients and shippers around the world is that prices go up. Now, air freight's been a bit different this year in the sense that it's been a continual rise throughout the entire year. Haven't seen that in a while, but it will continue to rise as well as price, or as the procurement market gets smaller and smaller, or spacing gets smaller and smaller, and people are making a mad dash to get space to move their cargo. So keep in mind, rates are going up, and not only that, something else to consider is Amazon FBA locations, their volumes are going up as well, and their carriers and their networks are also getting somewhat backed up with picking up their goods and delivering. So expect delays as far as once your goods hit port and you have to get a trucker in there to pick up. It could take some time to get that delivery in. So really what we're saying is plan ahead, plan for your volumes, book carriers early, expect to need more time as far as loading and unloading. And then additionally, just be flexible. I mean, your freight forwarder, hopefully you got a good one if you're not with Flexport, but be able to communicate, be flexible, and just understand that it is a crazy time of year. Prices are up. It takes a little time to deliver it, but as long as you have a good mode of communication, we'll be able to walk you through. Your freight forwarder should be able to walk you through this crazy time of year. So for homework, I don't know, Greg, is that up to us? Is that
Kim's the teacher in the bunch? Actually, she'll give everyone their homework.
So this week, there's kind of only one main thing that you need to do, which is to speak with your freight forwarder and plan out your shipment of inventory. From what we've learned today from this great session, this is something that you can start to communicate on as early as possible, even if you're, haven't placed your deposit yet or you're about to. It's a good idea to get that communication set up. So that's something that you can do. And then there's a couple of links on there that are really useful, lots of information on there about shipping to Amazon, and also HS code classifications. And then the homework sheet has some other resources too, which you can use to help you through this process.
All right. Travis and Sam, if you guys have about 5 more minutes, I know we're about at an hour, but I do have a few questions for you guys, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. All right. One question is, this is for Flexport specifically, but do you guys ship to all of the Amazon centers worldwide?
Currently, we're only shipping to Amazon US, Amazon Canada, and then Amazon UK, Amazon DE. We can ship to Amazon JP. But Amazon Japan is the most complicated. You have to, one, make sure that the Japanese authority will accept your goods, and then two, you have to present as a gift a sample of your product to the customs authority with a lot of other requirements. And then once customs accepts it, then you are now given privilege to import that good into Japan. It's a very formal and complicated process, but it can be done if you're willing to get into that market.
Okay, cool. And then I just wanted to, we went over a lot of information here. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who's never imported anything from China before. So real quick, I just want to go over the big picture overview with you guys real quick. So if I'm watching this, I'm an Amazon seller. I think probably the first step, after you've chosen your product and probably putting down your deposit, at that point, in my opinion, that'd be the good time to find a freight forwarder. Obviously, you guys do that at Flexport, and I personally use you guys. So you're a good one if they choose to select that. Probably the next point would be to go ahead and create the shipping plan inside of Amazon.
Yep.
And at that point, you want to notify your freight forwarder probably of the approximate date that the goods are going to be ready, and go ahead and get a quote from your freight forwarder. At which point, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these points. At which point, the freight, after you, I guess you've accepted that quote and you've essentially hired that freight forwarder, the freight forwarder generally communicates with a representative at the factory. I guess however you guys coordinate at the port. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So like flex porter, whoever else is going to communicate with the factory to essentially get the goods on the vessel. What steps am I forgetting in that process?
No, I mean, you got the main things down is, yeah, create your shipment plan first because you want to know where in the US or UK your goods are being sent to. And then once Amazon gives you your FBA warehouse, that's when you make a call request to your freight forwarder for that specific location. And then they'll know what area, what country, what warehouse to route it to for the prep. And yeah, as soon as the quote is accepted, how Flexport runs is we have an origin office in China. So one of our origin agents will reach out to your supplier directly, and then they just communicate directly to get all the goods, make sure that it's coordinated for the pickup, or if it's FOB, make sure they inform them where in China they're sending the goods to so we can receive them and start the shipment.
Cool. So at which point then the goods would be, we'll just, for our example, use an ocean shipment. The goods would be put on the ocean freight. It takes 2 or 3 weeks or whatever to arrive, probably into LA. At which point your freight forwarder, you guys at Flex Port, if it's not a full container load, at which point you will unload that container and palletize the products.
Yep.
Your goods, are your containers, not containers, cartons, hopefully already have the shipping labels on that Amazon gave you. These are going to be put on a pallet. The pallet will be wrapped up. You slap on a few of the pallet labels, and then a truck would pick it up from you guys' warehouse or whatever freight forwarder they use and take it to the Amazon distribution center. Is that a good representation of how this works?
Yep, you got it. You're an expert.
Okay, cool. All right, because I think that, yeah, I know it's like really confusing to a lot of people. Like and I think it was probably confusing for me, like kind of when I started too. And I know everyone has all these questions for me, like about like customs and this and that and the other thing. It's like I don't really know all these fine details because like my freight forwarder handles it for me, right? Like I pay you guys money, I tell you where my goods are, and my sales rep, whatever phone number, I tell you guys where they need to end up, and it's like I don't think most people need to really worry too much more than like what they've learned in this webinar about like all the nuances and like customs or whatever else. It's like just hire a freight forwarder. That's like pretty much the only way to go.
Right, exactly. We make sure it's peace of mind and then taking care of you.
Yeah, for sure. How do we find out about what products? I've heard a few horror stories about like the anti-dumping duties. Is that right?
Yep.
Is that what they're called? How do we
Yes.
find out like what products would be on that list? Because like the duties could be like pretty severe, right?
Right. They can be upwards of 100% duty.
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty crazy duty percentages. So yeah, it's just getting the knowledge, talking to a broker about your products, giving clear classification of where the manufacturer is located, what it is, and what the intended use case of the product is. And then finally, they need like the materials of construction, like what is it actually made of? And then from those inputs, they can research and provide like what is called as like an anti-dumping duty like regulation. And then it's still up to the importer to say yay or nay, like yes, my product fits that description, or no, it doesn't. And then they'll confirm if it falls under that scope. So
can you think of some product types off the top of your head that like fall into that category, maybe to kind of warn people of? Or
certain waxed candles fall under anti-dumping duty. I know solar panels do. Some random things like steel ball bearings coming from certain manufacturers. So it's on a region and manufacturer basis. So
oh, really?
not
Okay.
all solar panels are banned. It's just from certain manufacturers. It's anything that the U.S. government sees that a foreign country is like flooding our market with and makes our local manufacturers not able to compete. So they add the anti-dumping duty to like level the prices so the U.S. businesses have a fair playing field.
Right. Okay. All right. And then as we approach Q4 here, I know you kind of already talked about things get backlogged. Do like the full container load seem to get? I know I had like a big problem with this last year, but do the FCL shipments seem to be more backlogged than if you're just shipping like through UPS single items? From your experience?
Well, the reason why they become more backlogged is because the ports get so congested. So like the Port of Los Angeles can only handle so many trucks in a given day. And during fourth quarter, their available appointment slots are always booked up. It's like trying to get an appointment at, a 3-star Michelin star restaurant. Like, it's going to be really hard. And you just have to know that even if you can get an appointment, it's finding a trucker who has capacity and there's a chassis that's available. So like all these things have to fall into place. And that's really where the delays come from. But as soon as you can get out of the port, the rest of the process should flow pretty as normal. I mean, the warehouses will obviously have more volume, but we staff accordingly during that. So the delays are less from the warehouses, but more from just getting out of the port. Like, that is the bottleneck in the whole process.
Right. Okay. And then it seems like most of my shipments after the first one go into Moreno Valley, which I'm pretty fortunate for because it's close to you guys in LA. But like, if for people who like get a lot of their shipments on like the East Coast, you generally send to a different warehouse over there, and then that's where you unpack the containers from.
Right, exactly. So if you're giving like FBA in New Jersey is a common one, out in Florence, if you have a full container going straight there, we'll send the container to New York and then have our New York trucker pick it up and deliver it to that FBA center direct. Or if you're given a split, if you're given a split of pure East Coast warehouses, that's the only use case we would send the container for deconsolidation on the East Coast. But more than likely, if you're given a split,
it's probably pretty rare.
It's all over the place. Like, you'll get Washington, Seattle, and Florida. So in that case, it's still always best to send it to LA. You have the shortest transit time, the cheapest freight cost, and then divert it from there.
Okay. Do you know any cool tricks or hacks to try to get better shipment locations?
I do. So
share some insight with us.
Yeah. So there's a unique trick. Sellers were telling me that Amazon found the loophole, but then I think they maybe are looking the other way again because other people are still using this trick. But what you can do is, your supplier is going to create 500 cartons. And Amazon's going to give you a split for those 500. So you just tell Amazon, okay, I want to ship 1,500 cartons. So they give you a split of your 1,500 cartons, and then you choose the FBA center you want, delete the other 2 plans, and just deliver under that one.
Huh. So everyone use that at your own risk. That might be against the rules, but that's a cool hack.
Yeah, so that's one way people use that today, and I haven't gotten any negative feedback from it since recently.
Okay.
But that's basically it. Outside from using the inventory placement program, which costs a lot of money, there really is no way to move your FBA center.
Right.
I know with delivering full containers, so delivering a full container, your ship from address actually is irrelevant because you're not using Amazon services. Like, there is no Amazon drayage trucker. You have to use a freight forwarder's full container drayage trucker to deliver that box right into Amazon. So you can play around with that ship from address and see if it results in different FBA centers. And it could be international. So try like a German address, a random Brazilian address. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But that's another technique you could use.
Okay, cool.
If you were just sending inventory to the UK, would you still get a split? Or, it's a much smaller country, so...
It's a smaller country. I haven't seen UK splits yet, but they could happen anytime. I have seen splits in Germany, so they'll definitely split your cargo there. It just kind of depends on your products and where your buyers are within the UK.
Cool. This has been really good. Do you guys have any, or do you want to tell the audience? I told you guys you weren't allowed to pitch your pride, but do you want to tell your audience just a little bit more about Flexport, or if they're interested in using you guys, how they would do that?
Yeah, Sam, that's all you, buddy.
Absolutely. So Flexport is a full stack freight forwarder. Sorry, I thought I muted myself there. The full stack freight forwarder and customs brokerage. And the goal of it is to not only provide transparency and communication throughout, not only from quotes and booking all the way to delivery. As you could tell, Travis is a guru at everything and anything Amazon freight forwarding. And so he has kind of built this team out that helps to respond to these issues. And the whole point is that Flexport provides a one-stop shop for everything that you need to have happen with your moving your goods around the world. And ultimately, we're trying to just fix the user experience in global trade, make it trade free, and just give everyone an opportunity to move their goods, build brands, build awesome products, and then leave the nightmare that is logistics to us, and we'll handle it from beginning to end.
One thing that Flexport does, you guys do really well, is you're pretty much like the only company I've ever found that's not didn't build their user interface in like 1999 along with like the original Windows or something. Like a good user interface. It's cool how you can see where your shipments are out in the ocean and stuff. So I do like that. It is like the easiest one I've found to like communicate with your freight forwarder and stuff. So I can vouch for you for that part.
I appreciate that. To be honest with you, we're the only freight forwarder that has an infrastructure that was built after 1994. So
yeah, it shows.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, cool. Right on. Anything else you guys want to tell the audience before we finish it up?
Thanks for having us. We're big fans of Jungle Scout, so really
awesome.
Appreciate you guys having us on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Travis and Sam. I appreciate you guys coming on. This has been very valuable. For everyone watching and tuning along, if you haven't already done so, click the subscribe button below. That'll make sure that you are told about all upcoming sessions that we do for the $1 million case study. Make sure you can follow along with our whole progress all the way up to $1 million in revenue and to meet our goal of building 5 schools in developing countries around the world. So take care. See you guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Nice. Bye. See you guys.